Ladies and gentlemen, our top lead this evening is the Uniform Civil Code, an issue that raises temperatures in India every time it's mentioned. And as you know, it is usually mentioned when an election is round the corner. So there is an election in Madhya Pradesh this year, and next year there is the general election. And the Prime Minister officially kick-started campaigning with a pitch for the Uniform Civil Code. He said, and perhaps rightly, how can a country be governed by two laws? Then he launched into a tirade against the opposition, accusing them of misleading and provoking people in the name of the UCC. Politics and polarization, ladies and gentlemen, are part and parcel for any debate on the UCC. It's an issue that is both complex and controversial. So reducing it into a Hindu versus Muslim debate is unfair, and it's a travesty. Of course, a debate is needed when you want to bring a common law for a country as diverse as India. But the debate needs to be an informed one, not one that is based on half-truths or gyan from the WhatsApp university. So over the next 40 minutes or so, we will try and cover some basic ground. What is the UCC? How does it impact your life? And what are the concerns of different religious dominations opposing it? As I said, the issue is complex. The Law Commission has asked the public for its opinion. So before you form your opinion based on what you hear from rabid studio hoppers, just hear from people like you and me, reasonable, tax-paying citizens who are also God-fearing. Okay, let's start with this. I would like to begin by telling you what the Uniform Civil Code means. You, of course, know it. Just indulge me here for a couple of seconds. If and when UCC becomes a reality, it will be an overarching law that will apply to every citizen in this country. Every citizen. It will replace religious-based personal laws that rule aspects of marriage, divorce, inheritance, succession, and adoption. Out of all these, there are two that are very important: inheritance and divorce. I'll tell you why in just a bit. Right now, there are 5 personal laws at play in our country for 5 different religions. There's a different law for the Hindus, a different law for the Muslims, a different law for Parsis, a different law for Christians, and a different law for Jains. So there are 5 different personal laws at play in our country as we speak. Now, the most vocal opposition has come from the Muslim and Christians who call the UCC an interference in the way they practice their religion. The more rabid in these communities say that this is a majoritarian government targeting the minority to appease its vote bank. That may or may not be the case. But the UCC, if you look at it closely, is also about gender justice. For example, why should a law that allows a Muslim man to marry multiple times be allowed in a secular, democratic country like ours? Why should a Catholic Christian woman not have the right to a divorce? Why shouldn't a woman, irrespective of her religion, not have an equal right to inheritance? We will hear from a diverse set of people today. But first, let's start with what the Prime Minister said and the reaction his statement got from the opposition.
भारत के मुसलमान भाई बहनों को भी ये समझना होगा कि कौन से राजनीतिक दल उन्हें भड़का करके उनका फायदा लेने के लिए उनको बर्बाद कर रहे हैं। आजकल हम देख रहे हैं कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के नाम पर ऐसे लोगों को भड़काने का काम हो रहा है। हमें याद रखना है कि भारत के संविधान में भी नागरिकों के समान अधिकार की बात कही गई है। ये लोग हम पर आरोप लगाते हैं, लेकिन सच ये है कि यही लोग मुसलमान करते हैं। और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बार बार कहा है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट डंडा मारती है, कह रही है कॉमन सिविल कोड लाओ।
यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की जब बात प्रधानमंत्री कर रहे हैं, वो यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की नहीं बात कर रहे, वो हिंदू सिविल कोड की बात कर रहे हैं। पूरे जो इस्लामिक रेफरेंसेस है प्रैक्टिसेस के, उसको वो इलीगल ट्रीट करेंगे और पूरे हिंदू प्रैक्टिसेस को प्रधानमंत्री अंडर द लॉ प्रोटेक्ट कर लेंगे। मैं प्रधानमंत्री को चैलेंज कर रहा हूं, 300 एमपी आपकने है, आप हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड फैमिली को एबॉलिश करो पहले, नंबर 1। कर सकते क्या आप? उनका मकसद वही है। और एक क्या है कि मकसद क्या है कि टारगेट करो भारत के मुसलमानों को, उनको ह्यूमिलेट करो।
Sir, we are not going to follow on this. These are all the you answer about the unemployment. You answer about the poverty. You answer about the price rise. You answer about the atmosphere in this country on Manipur. You are not even talking about the Manipur. Burning last 60 days, Manipur is burning. Not even a single answer has been by Prime Minister. Not even a peace call. They were distracting all these issues. You are telling about some other things. We are not going to fall in that.
My Prime Minister is not very well informed on UCC. UCC is not an instrument for dog whistle politics. He should read 21st Law Commission report at length without the support of his advisors, because their advisors are actually playing a very nasty role. They make him speak things which he would not have spoken. Right? Then he should read the Constituent Assembly debates. UCC should not be an occasion of dog whistle politics. It's not about Hindus and Muslims. It's about Hindus also. The diversity of customs, of so many other things amongst Hindus. That's a matter of concern.
No, that's the whole point. That's exactly the point I'm also making, that the UCC is not about Hindus and Muslims. So let's not just reduce it to a Hindu-Muslim polarizing debate that sees marpitai in many studios. Now, BJP ruled states in India are already looking at implementing the UCC, which just, by the way, is mentioned in our constitution under the directive principles of state policy, Article 44. It may be a problem for the opposition, but for the BJP, it's one of the teen vachans of the party. 2, that is the Ram Mandir, and scrapping of Article 370 has already been fulfilled. What is left is the UCC. We already have Uttarakhand and UP and Gujarat looking at it closely, and the law minister has told Parliament that they can, because personal laws fall under the concurrent list. Interestingly, Goa has had a sort of uniform civil code that has been in force since the time of the Portuguese. Even today, many in Goa consider it to be a more gender-just law than any other law in this country, under which wives and daughters are equal inheritors. The law also doesn't recognize polygamy, including for Muslims, but grants an exception to a Hindu man to marry once again if his wife doesn't conceive a child by the age of 21 or a male child by the age of 30. So I'll say it's not perfect, but it is right now being held up as a model. Today, when the Prime Minister for the first time has spoken publicly about bringing in the UCC, we have Goa's Chief Minister speaking to us on his state's experience with the UCC. Here he is in conversation with Mirror Now's managing editor, Nikunj Garg. Listen in.
अच्छा, एक बात डॉक्टर सावंत आज बड़ी पर्टिनेंट है। पहली बार आज प्रधानमंत्री जी ने यूसीसी के बारे में बात की। मध्य प्रदेश में एक स्पीच दी उन्होंने, और उन्होंने कहा कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड के नाम पे हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमानों को ठगा जा रहा है। हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमानों से राजनीतिक पार्टियां एक राजनीतिक अप्रोच से यूसीसी की बात करती हैं। मैं यूसीसी राजनीतिक अप्रोच से देखता नहीं हूं। आपसे मैं ये सवाल इसलिए पूछ रहा हूं डॉक्टर सावंत, गोवा में ऑलरेडी यूसीसी है, आपको क्या लगता है एज द चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ स्टेट, जिसमें ऑलरेडी यूसीसी इंप्लीमेंटेड है, जिसमें यूसीसी के हिसाब से सारा कामकाज होता है, यूसीसी का जो बीजेपी का प्लेज है वो कितना प्रैक्टिकल है? प्राइम मिनिस्टर कह रहे हैं कि उसको राजनीति से जोड़ के देखना नहीं चाहिए। पहली बार आज खुद बोले हैं, काफी जोर से बरसे हैं, और विपक्ष को काफी लताड़ा है उन्होंने, ये कहते हुए कि ये इस पर राजनीति नहीं करनी चाहिए। आपको कैसे लगता है? यू आर द ओनली स्टेट वेयर इन दिस कंट्री यूसीसी इज ऑपरेशनल ऑलरेडी।
मैं बड़े गर्व से कहता हूं कि ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने जो कहा, यानी उसके लिए तो मैं उनका अभिनंदन करता हूं। और द यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड फॉलो करने वाली गोवा ये पहला राज्य है, और पूरे देश में यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड फॉलो करना चाहिए, जहां पे सभी जात धर्म के आधार पर
यानी डिवाइड नहीं होना चाहिए। यानी सभी के लिए यानी चाहे बर्थ रजिस्ट्रेशन हो, चाहे वो मैरिज रजिस्ट्रेशन हो, चाहे वो यानी बाकी प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स हो जो गोवा में फॉलो होते आ रहा है, सबके लिए एक ही कानून यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड होना जरूरी है। और आज जो बात यानी 3 तलाक के ऊपर आई, तभी उन्होंने कहा कि ये राजनीति जो कर रहे हैं बाकी दल कि सिर्फ यानी कुछ जात के आधार पर, धर्म के आधार पर यानी इस देश जो बांटना चाहते हैं, उनके लिए मुझे लगता है कि ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने सही जवाब दिया है कि यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड फॉलो करना जरूरी है। समझो आगे जाना है, नवभारत निर्माण के लिए यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड की जरूरत है।
डॉक्टर सावंत, आपके स्टेट में मुस्लिम पॉपुलेशन भी है, क्रिश्चियन पॉपुलेशन भी, सिग्निफिकेंट क्रिश्चियन पॉपुलेशन है। आई थिंक इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, गोवा में पूरे देश की सबसे हाईएस्ट डेंसिटी क्रिश्चियन पॉपुलेशन की, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग। तो ऐसे में आपको मुख्यमंत्री रहते हुए अब लंबा समय हो गया, आप एक्सपीरियंस चीफ मिनिस्टर्स में आते हैं, आपका क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा है यूसीसी को इम्प्लीमेंटेशन करने में? क्या किसी तरह की दिक्कतें आपको आती हैं माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी के साथ?
बिल्कुल नहीं आती है, कभी इस तरह की दिक्कत नहीं आई है। और यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड तो पहले से फॉलो करते आ रहे हैं, तो स्टेट में किसी माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी को भी कभी प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुआ है। पहले से अच्छी तरह से सभी लोग फॉलो कर रहे हैं। इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि जिस तरह से गोवा में समझो फॉलो हो सकता है, तो बाकी स्टेट में यूसीसी फॉलो करने के लिए कोई दिक्कत नहीं रहेगी।
सो आपके एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव एक्सपीरियंस में यूसीसी कोई चैलेंज नहीं है, पॉलिटिकल टूल जरूर हो सकता है?
जी हाँ, बिल्कुल, इट इज नॉट अ चैलेंज। बाकी लोगों के लिए राजनीति चलाने वाला दुकान उनका हो सकता है, लेकिन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में और बाकी यानी इसीलिए तो ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर हमेशा के लिए बोलते हैं कि सबका साथ सबका विकास। यही तो सब लोगों ने साथ दिया तो ही सबका विकास हो सकेगा।
डॉक्टर सावंत, एक और बात मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ। हाल फिलहाल में आप काफी जोर शोर से एक चीज को लेके लगे हुए हैं कि पोर्चुगीज जो कल्चर है इस स्टेट में, या पोर्चुगीज जो रूल रहा है इस स्टेट में, उसको अब हमें पीछे छोड़ देना चाहिए, उसको मिटा देना चाहिए, उसके बारे में बात खत्म कर देनी चाहिए, क्योंकि वो पोर्चुगीज ने यहाँ पे मंदिर तोड़े और पोर्चुगीज ने यहाँ पे और तरह की एट्रोसिटीज की, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा। तो आपको क्या लगता है डॉक्टर सावंत कि अगर हम पोर्चुगीज रूल को यहाँ से हटाने या ऑबिलिटरेट करने की एक तरह से बात करें, तो गोवा रह पाएगा?
हम लिबरेट होकर अभी 60 साल पूरे हो गए हैं और गोवा की संस्कृति तो हजारों साल पुरानी है। यहाँ कदम काल से लेके मराठा सभी यानी रूलर्स रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि अभी हमारी ओन संस्कृति है वो प्रमोट करना जरूरी है। इसीलिए तो अभी कॉलोनियल माइंडसेट से बाहर आना जरूरी है। इसीलिए तो हमेशा के लिए हम हमारी संस्कृति की बात करते हैं और जो गोवन ओन संस्कृति है वो आगे आनी चाहिए। वही हम संस्कृति लोगों को दिखा सके, द एक्चुअल गोवन संस्कृति, यानी जो टूरिस्ट आते हैं उनके लिए और गोवा के आगे आने वाले न्यू जनरेशन के लिए भी ये संस्कृति रहना उचित है।
Now let me go straight across to Nikunj, who is joining us from Goa this evening. Hi Nikunj, good evening. Good to have you on the show. A bit ironical when I heard the Chief Minister say what he said, given the fact that the Goa Civil Code is a dharohar of the Portuguese as well. But as far as Goa's experience with the UCC is concerned, the Chief Minister says it's been a walk in the park, as it were. But many people will argue that if a UCC has to be bought in for the entire country, the one thing that will be required more than anything else is consensus.
Well, many questions you intertwine, Shreya, in one. First, it is not as if the UCC has been taken in toto from the Portuguese rule. An Indian intervention and an Indian ratification was required in the way of the Constituent Assembly's approval when Goa became part of India through the parliament, and that is how UCC has continued in Goa. So it's not just that it has flowed over from the Portuguese rule and therefore it is there. There have been instances including agitations against the UCC in Goa. So it's not as if in the past Goa has not seen any protests from various quarters apropos a separate set of laws being operational, particularly about the rights of women in property. And till this day, there is some amount of, you would be surprised to know, and I'm quite sure that most of our viewers probably would not know, that in the state of Goa, even if a man has an inherited property, that inherited property cannot even be kept as a mortgage, forget about selling it, kept as a mortgage. Banks will not grant you a mortgage unless your spouse signs those documents. So the property, even if has been inherited by the man, becomes a joint custody of a couple once they are married. So it's a very progressive law. I am not aware of many jurisdictions across the world which have these kinds of laws, and these has certainly required an Indian ratification. Point number one. Point number two, Goa has time and again till about 90s seen various sorts of protests against these laws, which as amalgam of which is called the UCC, the Goa model. So it is not as if the state governments have not gone through those kinds of protests, but they have held on to their own, and they have still carried on with that law. Point number two. Point number three, you have to obviously see it from the political prism. It is coming from a BJP chief minister. Dr. Pramod Sawant is an RSS man who has risen to become the chief minister of state of Goa. He is the second term chief minister of state of Goa. Quite clearly, he is not going to go against his party line. Quite clearly, he will back the prime minister. But quite clearly, he is very categoric in saying one thing, that with significant minority population, remember, forget about the Muslims, the Christian density of population in the state of Goa is highest in the country. So there are all kinds of minorities here, and when we will talk about the country, we will also have to keep in mind the Sikh minority, which also have a separate set of personal laws. With significant minority population in the state, the chief minister is categoric in saying that, administratively, there is no impediment in implementing the policy. Administratively, it's a fair policy, and all communities have learned to live with it. Now, remember, if you look at it from the political prism, it is coming from a BJP chief minister. But if you look at it from the administrative prism, quite clearly, it has worked well for the Goans. And at the end of the day, most people will call it progressive. However, Goa is a small state, small population. Can you replicate it across the country in hundreds and hundreds of millions of people? A population of nearly 150 crore people successfully? That's the challenge. That is the challenge that the government of India will have to encounter and surmount. Encountering is one thing, surmounting is completely different thing. So you will need not only the political will for it, which quite clearly this dispensation will have, but you will need administrative acumen to implement it. Remember, political will in democracies is completely different thing from administrative acumen for implementation to the satisfaction of the citizenry. Now, that's the real challenge, to marshal administrative acumen and successfully implement any law, whether it is progressive or whether it is bringing the state or the laws up to date for the benefit of citizens.
Nikunj, we leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. Nikunj Garg joining us from Goa. He's interviewed the Chief Minister of Goa, the only state in the country right now that has a UCC. That interview also up on a Twitter handle in case you want to revisit it.